Many of us were taught that silence is a virtue from the very beginning of our childhood. We were rewarded for maintaining harmony, commended for being amiable, and instructed that confrontation should be feared rather than faced. But as Carl Jung frequently cautioned, the risk of this kind of conditioning is that it may conceal a more serious injury. Although silence could seem like maturity, it could actually be fear disguised as civility. And dread turns into a silent robber if it is ignored. Your voice is stolen. It saps your soul. It hints that your reality is too big, too dangerous, or too awkward to be heard. How many times have you bitten your tongue out of a sense of security rather than wisdom? How many times, despite your inner soul flinching, have you nodded in agreement to prevent friction? The price of silence becomes too high at some point in life, usually after decades of self-abandonment. What once felt like calm turns into a prison as the pressure of spoken truths mounts like steam in a confined room. According to Jung, we are here to individuate, to become whole, rather than just to fit in. Furthermore, wholeness originates from inner truth rather than obedience. However, the world frequently encourages masks and penalizes sincerity. It conveys the message that having needs is a burden, that speaking up is disruptive, and that saying no is self-centered. Your inner life, however, is more aware. A part of you wants to be seen for the soul you carry, not for the character you perform. This is an appeal for bravery, not for mayhem. The guts to disagree without feeling uncomfortable. The guts to put your instincts ahead of what other people think. The guts to quit altering who you are in order to please other people. Because fear-based silence is the gradual erasure of self and is not serenity. You were born to be true to yourself, not to please others. And sometimes speaking the truth, even when your voice falters, is the most potent act of love for both you and other people. A subtle form of pain develops over years, so subtle that many people are unaware of it until something within of them starts to crack. Small silences, moments when you decide not to argue, speak up, or disturb the delicate calm, are the first step. It feels honorable at first. You convince yourself that you're being selfless, kind, or mature. However, something sacred, your truth, begins to erode beneath the surface. Carl Jung cautioned that suppressed emotions do not just disappear. Rather, they move into the unconscious, where they continue to exist and subtly alter the personality. Even though you may believe you have moved on, the hidden reality starts to skew and whisper in your life. These quiet moments add up to something more substantial over time. Because you've been feeling for other people, you start to lose sight of your own feelings. Before responding to straightforward questions, you consider which answer will result in the least amount of conflict. You begin to live as a version of yourself that was created for survival rather than for truth. This is self-abandonment, not kindness, and it happens much more frequently than we realize. This tendency can become profoundly embedded for those in long-term roles, such as parents, friends, coworkers, or lovers. You turn into the person who is dependable, amiable, and never causes trouble. Beneath that facade, however, is a silent pain, a desire to be recognized for your honesty rather than your harmony. Because you give another part of who you are to someone else, each time you choose comfort over the truth. After a while, you start to question where you went. A familiar-looking face is reflected in the mirror, but there is a sense of something missing behind the eyes. One of the biggest risks of repression, according to Jung, is this disintegration of the ego. You cannot find serenity if you live your life avoiding conflict. Your dread of rejection takes control of you. Headaches, stress, fatigue, and emotional numbness are all symptoms that a life has strayed too far from its core, and the body starts to bear the weight as the spirit becomes restless in its quiet. Regaining your original voice and realizing that you are free to express your emotions, desires, and needs is the first step towards recovery. Reclaiming oneself is a restorative act, not a rebellious one. It is the soul recalling its former self before fear taught it to conceal it. The moment is silent. Its fine is often followed by a pause, but in reality, it's everything but. It looks like adulthood on the outside, but something sacred is flinching inside. Every time we suppress our emotions, a part of ourselves sinks farther into the darkness. According to Jung, resentment is a flare signal, a cry from the buried self attempting to emerge through the gaps of repression, rather than a defect. Silence is the birthplace of resentment, not anger. Additionally, it rises gradually, like pressure beneath stone, rather than erupting all at once. You might not even notice it at first. You refer to it as patience. You refer to it as love. You convince yourself that you're acting better. However, the emotional cost gradually becomes apparent in subtle ways. Your grin tightens, your tone becomes colder, and you mentally relive previous exchanges, speculating about what you ought to have said. The unsaid weighs heavily. Your spirit starts to hurt where your words could never go. This is the gradual deterioration of authenticity, not just emotional distress. Boundaries do not go away when they are not expressed. Rather, they fester. They morph into fatigue, sarcasm, or disengagement. Sincere interactions are replaced by passive-aggressive remarks. Emotional presence is replaced by icy silence. What used to seem like kindness begins to feel like martyrdom. In your own life, you become a stranger, present but incomplete. You're at war with yourself in addition to avoiding confrontation with other people. Spiritual exhaustion results from this internal division. Even after sleeping, you wake up exhausted. Happiness fades. It seems like relationships are required. It's not because life is meaningless. Rather, it's because your truth isn't heard. Life turns into a show rather than an experience the more you compromise your core reality. In addition to being injured, you are also invisible, unheard, and unaffected by the life you lead. But there is a benefit to this pain. It is a call to recover the voice you have silenced. Healing starts when you honor what is real, when you name the truth, not to hurt but to heal. The way out is not to blow up or place blame, but to go back to the self that has been waiting behind every "I'm okay." When resentment is heard, it transforms into revelation. It directs you to the locations where your soul was abandoned. You start to return home if you follow it. Living behind unsaid walls is not what you were intended to do. The quiet was the issue, not your voice. Silence becomes unbearable at some point, not because others have changed, but rather because something inside of you starts to move. A voice comes out, clear and quiet, almost defiant, but not angry. You were never intended to live a little life. It murmurs something you once dared not think. Your true self is calling you back with this voice. Nature referred to this holy return as the will to power, while Jung dubbed it the process of individuation. The ability to be whole, to live authentically as who you are without compromising your identity to appease others, is more important than power or supremacy. There are no fireworks to accompany this awakening. It manifests as weariness, irritation, and a feeling that your life is no longer your own. You start to see that the parts you've performed are really just prisons masquerading as virtue. You weren't made to agree, grin, or absorb endlessly through your own erasure. The more profound reality is that refusing is not a sign of treachery. It's just the beginning. It is not arrogance to take up space. It's alignment. Furthermore, putting your own needs ahead of those of others is not selfishness. Rather, it is self-preservation. Many people, particularly those in their middle years, come to a point when they can no longer live with compromises on the outside. Unspoken needs, unfulfilled goals, and emotional self-abandonment become too much to bear. This is both the turning point and the breaking point. You start to realize how much it has cost you to please other people. And gradually, You begin to recover what was once unquestionably given away: your voice, your truth, and your time. Self-reclamation is anchored, not loud. It's the silent strength of saying no without feeling bad, of eschewing phony harmony for isolation, of leaving without saying sorry. Being understood by everyone is no longer your purpose. Your purpose in life is to lead an honest life. Your energy changes the more you live out this reality. You have a unique way of attracting people. You react differently because you're no longer hiding behind a mask. Your breathing has changed. Your center is where you live. This is the will to control yourself, not other people. The will to find your genuine self again, to hold your truth like a sacred flame, even when it wavers in the wind, and to defend that light with presence, boundaries, and words. It's not an easy journey. It frequently entails loss. However, you lose the version of yourself that was never complete in the first place. The self that has been waiting all along is what you get. Every soul must traverse an inner desert in search of truth. The camel, conditioned to bear the weight of shoulds and musts, is the first figure to emerge in that enormous terrain. It absorbs what is taught to be right. Be good. Keep quiet. Even if it means letting go of your own intuition, be unselfish. Many people spend years at this stage, confusing fortitude with virtue and healing with tranquility. However, something inside of me becomes restless, a question that rises from the sand like heat. Whose life am I carrying? The second transformation is triggered by this query. The camel changes into a lion since it can no longer support the weight. The lion roars for dominion, not attention. It's the part of you that ultimately says no, not out of anger, but with clarity. Old roles, ingrained ideas, and a notion that self-sacrifice is the ultimate good are all torn down by the lion. It just starts to exist. It doesn't ask for permission. It's not always an elegant stage. It could manifest as leaving, being alone yourself, or defying the roles that other people want you to fulfill. But when the soul stops whispering and starts speaking, that is the sacred revolt. However, the lion itself is not the ultimate shape. There is much to learn now that the spirit has regained its territory. It is not a return to submission, but rather a rebirth into greater freedom. This is the child, sacredly free, but not naive. The self-restored is the child. It dances because it remembers joy, not to please. Life itself is an art form, not a performance. The youngster just lives with its innocence restored and its guilt erased. It doesn't care about proving itself or winning fights. Jung viewed these three phases as psychic impulses that directed the path to individuation rather than as inflexible processes. At different points in your life, you might find yourself in the child's freedom, the lion's defiance, or the camel's stillness. The important thing is to understand that healing requires honesty rather than perfection and to avoid hurrying. You stop carrying things that are not yours when you have a clear vision of who you are. You stop fighting battles that have already been won. The dread of being who you were before the world urged you to hide has also gone away. Conflict is avoided by most individuals throughout their lives, as if it were fire that may destroy them. Carl Jung, however, believed that conflict was a precious mirror rather than an enemy. It reveals your true self beneath your acting, indoctrination, and civility. The silence that comes before confrontation, the self-betrayal that builds up when you choose comfort over truth, is what hurts you, not the conflict itself. Conflict is clarity, not chaos. It is the area where your innermost self emerges and dares to be noticed. Our culture values peace, but frequently at the price of genuineness. We are trained to maintain harmony, but nobody questions if this harmony is genuine or simply the result of dishonesty. When they reach maturity, many discover that they have built entire lives, marriages, occupations, and ideological systems out of fear of conflict rather than conviction. They have been avoiding confrontation for so long that they have lost the ability to identify their own voice. However, truth is a peculiar requirement of life. The soul will eventually rebel, and it will do so loudly. You can regain your voice in the theater of conflict. It's when you declare, "This is who I am," even if doing so means losing favor. It is the act of stating your limits, despite trembling hands. Being present is more important than being aggressive or domineering. The edges of who you are exposed by conflict. It demonstrates where you start and where others stop. It shows you where you've overreached and where you've been too quiet. And something strong, not a part, nor a response, but you, emerges in this unvarnished revelation. According to Jung, confrontation is necessary for inner development to occur. Individualization entails confronting the conflict between your true self and the person you were taught to be. Freedom is born out of that tension. It requires honesty and dispels illusions. Healing is the capacity to remain rooted in your truth while standing in it, not the absence of conflict. To choose authority over silence and to breathe through tension. Your voice is a conduit to your soul, not a weapon. Additionally, you become one step closer to the life that lies beyond fear each time you use it to identify your truth. At one point in the healing process, silence becomes a chain rather than shield. You come to see that each time you compromise your truth for the sake of harmony, you not only calm the situation at hand, but also shatter your inner universe. Carl Jung had a profound understanding of this. He recognized that pretense does not nourish the soul. It cannot flourish in settings that reward conformity and penalize authenticity. When you honor its voice, the soul awakens from its silent withering. For those who have lived their entire lives gaining affection through obedience, this is particularly difficult. Speaking your truth can feel like walking in a fire if your nervous system is programmed to view confrontation as danger. Jung, however, believed that this fire was alchemical and essential to change. It destroys fear, illusion, and the conditioned self that has learned to compromise its wants in order to gain acceptance. Although unpleasant, that fire is cleansing. Speaking your truth means coming home to yourself, not declaring war. It is to recover all of the parts of yourself that were banished in silence. The adult who continues to nod courteously while their soul cries beneath. The inner kid who discovered it was safer to be invisible. Every no you utter from the bottom of your heart is a yes to the part of you that yearns to be free. Every barrier you establish serves as a doorway, an invitation to a more profound present, mindful living, and calm gained via integrity rather than a wall. You weren't made to be incredibly amiable. Being an echo of what other people expect of you is not your purpose. You're supposed to get entire. Furthermore, totality is not passive or silent. It is your entire being, rooted in clarity, bravely articulated, and lived without regret. There will always be times when it's easier to keep quiet, times when it's safer to do so than to run the danger of being rejected. But instead of becoming prisons, let those moments be invitations, reminders that you are following a divine path that leads to truth rather than perfection. Because healing is the presence of your soul, fully embodied, no longer shrouded in shadows, rather than the absence of pain. The child who still dreams, produces, and believes in freedom is inside you, as is the lion who learns to defend the holy, the camel that carried what was never yours to bear. They are not lost. Rather, they are waiting for you, your voice, your bravery, and the statement, "I choose to stay silent no more." In that instant, you're not only mending but also coming back. You're recalling. You're evolving into the person you were always intended to be. Don't stop here if this message sparks something within of you. You will learn more about self-discovery, growth, and healing in the upcoming video. Your soul may have been longing for this breakthrough. Now tap into it. Click subscribe enable notifications, and become a part of a community dedicated to transformation, truth, and real interchange. On this journey, you're not by alone. We continue to evolve into the people we were always destined to be in the upcoming video, where I'll see you.